bit about myself and how I became interested in manta rays. So I'm originally from North Carolina, and I graduated from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in 2007. And after graduating from university, I ended up traveling around the world working on different field projects. So you can see here, here I'm in Costa Rica, Honduras. This is in West Africa in a country called Ghana. And in most of these places, I was studying sea turtles. So what I would do is I would spend half the year in a different country studying sea turtles. And then the other half of the year in the summers, I would come to Florida to study sea turtles. So this is a picture of me on my ATV in Florida many, many, many years ago. And basically what you do when you study sea turtles is you go up and down the beach on your ATV and you're counting the tracks that from the nesting sea turtles the night before. So I would spend all day driving up and down the beach. And what I would sometimes notice is I would look over into the ocean and I would see these gigantic rays swimming past me. And I'm a scuba diver. I love the ocean. And I just couldn't believe we had manta rays swimming in 3 feet of water in Florida. It blew me away. So what I did is I convinced one of my friends to take me out on the boat to see if we could go find one so I could swim with one. And this is the actual photo of my very first manta ray that I saw in 2010. So 10 years ago now. And what happened when I got in the water with this manta ray for the first time is the manta ray flipped upside down and swam underneath me like this. And this is what manta rays will do to get a better look at you. But manta rays are also known for being quite curious. Hopefully this video is playing well for everybody. So when this happened, I was just completely blown away. I had no idea that interactions like this could happen. Actually, this is a different encounter. In that first encounter, I had a camera in my hand, but I couldn't take any pictures because I was just in awe of what was happening. So being the good scientist that I am, I went onto Google Scholar, which is this Google for scientists, where you can find scientific publications. And I put in manta ray in Florida to see if anyone had done any research about manta rays in Florida. And to this day, this is still the result that comes up. And basically this is a paper that's from 1998 from a state biologist who just says he observed 3 manta rays in Florida in the 1990s. So basically there's nothing known about the manta rays in Florida. And we actually, this pandemic, I've been able to submit my first paper for publication. So hopefully this will be changed in this coming year. But the only other published stuff about mantas in Florida are from the early 20th century. And they are from these old fishing stories about people who would harpoon manta rays. So this is from a photo from 1916. So people would come to Florida and go out on these little boats and actually harpoon manta rays. And this is a photo, I don't know if anyone recognizes that guy, but that's the 26th president of the United States, Teddy Roosevelt, and a manta ray that he harpooned in Florida. So that's kind of sad, but that's not done anymore. So back to me a little bit. So after all that happened with the manta rays and the sea turtle beaches, I went to grad school where I actually wanted to study the manta rays in Florida. But long story short, it didn't work out. And I ended up burying magnets around sea turtle nests to see how they use the Earth's magnetic field to navigate as hatchlings, which involved me staying up all night in the lab, watching turtles swim in circles on a computer screen in the dark. It wasn't quite as I had imagined it with being in the water doing cool research. And unfortunately, those results didn't turn out very well. I kept on having problems with my magnetic apparatus, and I ended up having to change my master's thesis in the last semester of graduate school, which is not a fun thing to do. And I ended up analyzing some data one of my professors had about sea turtle hatchlings and how their body proportions differ and how this might affect their ecology and evolution. So if things fail in the research world, which they always will when you're doing field work, always keep at it. So after grad school, I ended up taking a job on a sailboat where I sailed all around the Caribbean and across the Atlantic. And I was doing this while teaching marine biology and scuba diving. So I did this for a year and a half before moving back to Florida. And I had always been thinking about these manta rays everywhere I had gone. And I was wondering if someone was going to start studying them since I hadn't gotten around to it yet. But I moved back to Florida in 2016 and nobody had. So on my days off from my full-time job, I decided to find out can we even find mantas reliably from a boat. A lot of people I talked to, a lot of scuba divers and even scientists told me, like, you can't study manta rays here in Florida. You're not going to be able to find them. They're pretty rare here. But what we found is that, yes, we can find them. We saw manta rays on about half our surveys that summer and identified 10 manta individuals. So that was our first suggestion, that we actually can find manta rays here in Florida and that it's possible to study them. So I started the Florida Manta Project in collaboration with the Megafauna Foundation. I had always been in touch with MMF's founder, Andrea Marshall, and she had always been very supportive of me starting this project. So it made sense for us to team up and work together, and I love working with MMF. They're such a great organization. So just a little bit about manta rays first is, manta rays are really large rays. This is a small one, but the large rays can get up to 7 meters. So that's well over 20 feet. If you're talking about disc width, so that's from the tip of one fin to the tip of the other fin. So they get really, really big, and they're filter feeders. So what they do is they swim through the water, and manta rays have to keep swimming in order to be able to breathe. They never stop swimming. They have to keep the water moving over their gills. And when they're ready to feed, they unroll their cephalic fins. So those are these pointy things that are in front of their face. So they unroll these cephalic fins and open their mouth and swim through the water and let all the plankton collect in these structures called their gill rakers, and then they can swallow all their food. So when you're trying to identify a manta ray from a different kind of ray, these cephalic fins are always what you should be looking for. And manta rays also have the largest brain of any fish. And they don't just have a big brain because they're a big fish, they have a big brain for their body size. So we think manta rays are really smart, and that's why probably we see some of that behavior like I showed you at the beginning, where that manta ray was coming up to investigate me. So manta rays, this is a pregnant manta ray, a pregnant female manta ray. And manta rays have some of the most conservative life history strategies out of any of the sharks and rays. They're pregnant for 1 year. So they have that baby for 1 year, and they produce 1 pup. Very rarely it's 2, but most often it's 1 pup. And they do this every 2 to 5 years. So if you do the math on that, these female manta rays are not having a lot of offspring over their lifetimes, which means they can't really withstand any pressures. Like if they're hunted, they can be hunted out really easily because they can't reproduce very quickly. And if anyone wants to see something really cute, here's a little manta ray fetus. So the manta ray babies are really big, and so in order to fit in the womb, they have to have their pectoral fins flipped over their back like a little manta burrito, in order for them to fit there. So can anyone guess how big they think a baby manta ray is? Pick a number in your head. How many feet or meters, depending on where you are, from tip to tip? Everyone got a number? So manta rays are born at about 6 feet across, or 1.8 meters. So these babies are really, really, really big. And what's very interesting is that no one has ever observed a manta ray birth in the wild. The only way we know how big these baby manta rays are from having fetuses and dead mantas, or there's an aquarium in Japan that has bred captive mantas, and they have witnessed births in their aquarium. They've had like 7 manta rays born there. So this is one of those manta rays from Japan, which was born at 1.82 meters or 6 feet across. So that is a very, very large baby. So what we do in Florida when we are going out on a manta survey is we go out on my boat. This is me, and I stand up on the bow of my boat, and I am looking around for manta rays. And usually we're looking out in pretty shallow water right near the beach. I stand up here because this is the highest place I can get. This is a map of our survey area. We usually take our boat out of this Palm Beach Inlet, and we either go south to Boynton Beach in Florida or north up to Jupiter. This year we started going all the way up to St. Lucie Inlet, even though it's a very long boat ride, because we could not find mantas in our normal study area, and we found them all hiding out up here. And so what we're looking for are these black shapes that are swimming over the white sand in Florida. So I can tell you that I have identified every single manta-shaped rock in South Florida and looked at them closely, but now I know where they all are and we can go buy them. So we're looking for these big black shapes that move. And when we find a manta ray, we get in the water with it. So we're doing this all free diving or snorkeling. None of this is done on scuba, because usually we're seeing these mantas in very shallow water. And also the babies can be a little bit shy, so they're very skittish and can swim very, very fast. So the data we're trying to collect when we get in the water with them are, first, we're trying to get a photograph of the spot pattern on their bellies. So manta rays, individuals, each have a unique spot pattern. So this is similar to like your fingerprint. So we can take a picture of this spot pattern and know who that manta ray is. We get a picture of that. We also take a look at their pelvic fins, which are these 2 fins down here, to see if they're male or female. And we'll do a quick ray anatomy lesson. So these rays, the one on the right is a female and the one on the left is a male. And the way you can tell is that males have paired organs called claspers. And this is true for all sharks and rays. So the male will have these 2 claspers, the female will not. She will just have the pelvic fins. And what's interesting is with the claspers, they grow as the male grows. So we can tell approximately how old they are based on the size of their claspers. So in this picture labeled A, you can see the claspers are very small. In picture B, or so picture A is a juvenile manta ray. In picture B, you can see they're starting to grow. And in picture D, this is a fully sexually mature male. You can see the claspers are fully calcified, and there's clasper glands, which are these kind of bulbous regions right here. And that means it's a fully adult male that's reproducing. We're also taking notes on the habitat, any anthropogenic impacts, and anthropogenic is just a fancy science word for humans. So we look for impacts from humans. So this manta ray has a fishing lure in her lower jaw. And we're also looking at any behaviors. Are the mantas feeding? Are they mating? Any environmental conditions, and also we track which species we see with them. Usually with big creatures in the ocean, they have lots of tag-alongs, like these little shark suckers here that are tagging along with the manta ray. And what I want to make note of is those pictures I've shown you so far are all so beautiful, and that's because we have a lot of talented photographers such as Bethany Agliere and Bryant Turfs who work with us and take these beautiful manta photos. But that is not what it looks like all the time. In reality, a lot of times these mantas are very fast. The water, it's mostly clear, but sometimes it's not. So I have way more photos that look like this than I do that look like this. I wish it were the opposite. But since these mantas are really fast and are often in shallow water, swimming right over the bottom, what we usually do is we have a GoPro on an extended pole that we can swim and put it underneath the manta ray to get the shot of their spot pattern. So our results so far for this study is that we've identified 59 individuals and had 145 encounters with manta rays. We see about an equal percentage of male and females in our study. And what we find is that we recite these mantas a lot. So remember that we can tell they're the same manta by their spot pattern. So this manta is a manta ray on the left named Jigsaw, who we saw in the years 2017 and 2018. This manta on the right is a manta named Rocco that we saw in 2016 and 2017. He was actually hit by a boat and lost his tail. And this middle manta right here is named Gilly, and we've actually seen Gilly 23 times in our study. So I don't even have to, I can just swim underneath and look at his spots and I know who Gilly is because I've seen him so many times, and he's one of my favorite manta rays. So we're seeing these manta rays over and over again, and all of the manta rays we're seeing are immature. So remember I told you about if the males have these small claspers that they're juveniles. That is all the males that we've seen in Florida or in South Florida have been juvenile male manta rays. With the females, it's harder to assign an age class because they don't have these claspers that you can see. The only way to tell if a female is fully grown is if you see her visibly pregnant, like that other photo, or if you see they'll have like mating scars on their wingtip from mating with the males. But we haven't seen any evidence of mating in our study site. We find that about a quarter of the mantas we see are feeding. So how you tell that they're feeding is they'll have these cephalic fins unrolled and their mouth will be wide open so they can trap all that yummy plankton inside. We see them feeding near the bottom sometimes and also at the surface of the water. And most of the mantas that we see are just traveling. So they'll have their cephalic fins all rolled up and they'll just be swimming in one direction. Usually they swim north or south, kind of along the beach. And where we are in South Florida, we have a lot of people down here. And so there are a lot of boats, a lot of fishermen, a lot of people on the beach, and we see a lot of interactions with mantas and humans. And about 25% of our mantas are seen very close to a fishing pier or an inlet jetty, and inlet jetties are places where people fish as well as where boats come out into the ocean. So this is a picture of a fishing jetty here and a manta ray right here. And so what we see is we see about 27% of our mantas have fishing line on them. So they're being hooked by fishermen, and this can vary in the severity of these interactions. For instance, this one in the top left corner has 2 pieces of monofilament. They're a little hard to see, but this bottom piece of monofilament was actually wrapped inside the manta's gills, and I had to pull it all the way out. You can see this picture on the right. There's a lot of algae on the manta ray, or on the fishing line, which indicates that the lines might have been there for a while. And if you look right here, you can see that it's tightly wrapped around the body and digging into the edge of the body. And these can cause pretty deep lacerations. And this manta also looks like it might have had an encounter with a shark. And then this manta on the bottom left, you can see it has fishing line wrapped around its cephalic fin, which is completely broken, which is probably going to affect this manta's ability to feed. So these can be big problems. And if something were to happen where the fishing line became entangled and prevented the manta from being able to swim, remember mantas have to be able to swim in order to breathe so they can drown. And so these are all some concerns we have with fishing line entanglement. So here's a video I'm going to show you. I'll stop talking while the video comes, but this is a manta ray named Stevie Nicks, who is another one of my favorite manta rays. And what we see sometimes, we always try to get the fishing line off the manta rays when we see it. And sometimes the manta rays will stop swimming, or just hover on the bottom and kind of let us remove the fishing line from them. And you can see this in this interaction.
Nice job, Jessica. Oh my God.
As you can see, I was very excited at the end of that because it took me about 30 minutes of diving down, because part of the fishing line was actually wire that you had to cut through. It took me a really long time to be able to cut through that. So you can see, this is another example of why we think mantas might be intelligent. I put this warning on here just because I didn't know what age groups might be watching. So this might be a little graphic. So if you don't want to see this photo, maybe close your eyes for the next 5 or 10 seconds. But we also see manta rays hit by boats. So this is that manta ray named Gilly that I told you about, that I know really well. And one day we got in the water with him and saw that he had been injured by a boat. And how we know this is a boat, this deep injury that you see right here, I hope you guys can see my cursor, is from the bottom of the engine, what's called the skeg. And these parallel marks here are from the propeller making chop marks. And you can actually see, if you look under this injury here, it looks like he had another older injury. So this was on August 15th, 2018. We saw him again 4 days later, and this is what it looked like. So manta rays can heal really, really, really fast. We've seen him since then, and it's completely healed, and you can barely even see it at all. So manta rays have these amazing abilities to heal. Here's another example of a manta named Rosa, who had a propeller injury on her pectoral fin. And you can actually see the blue water. You can see all the way through her pectoral fin. And we saw her about 6 weeks later, and that injury had completely healed up. So while it's good that manta rays are able to heal really easily, it probably means we're underestimating the amount of times or the amount of interactions that are happening with boat strikes, because if we don't see it during that, probably 6 week time period when they're healing, after they're healed, they're very hard to tell sometimes that it actually came from a propeller. And what we find is that a lot of these manta rays like to use inlets. I'll show you a video right here, and this is probably why we see a lot of vessel interactions. So what we think is happening here in these inlets, which I think Caroline is on here, who works with a company called Nortec, because I'm very interested in studying these inlets, is that the mantas appear to come into these inlets to rest. They face into the current, and it's kind of like just an easy place for them to chill out and just let the current, hold them in place. But the bad thing about that is these inlets are very busy with boats and boats and boats. So we're trying to measure what the current is in this inlet and see what it is about it that they like so much. And so what this all means, the fact that we're seeing manta rays over and over again, which means they're kind of living in this habitat, and the fact that we're only seeing juvenile manta rays means this is a nursery ground. So a nursery ground is a place where young animals can usually develop safely into adulthood. So these are really important areas to know about and protect. And this is also important because manta rays were just listed on the endangered species list in 2018. And under the Endangered Species Act, we're supposed to designate critical habitat of that species, but we don't have enough information on the manta rays here in Florida to designate any critical habitat. So it's really important that we keep gathering research about these manta rays. And around the world, manta ray populations are declining. So it's really important that we learn about them and protect them. So some of the other research that we're doing we do aerial surveys. So this means we get up in a teeny tiny plane, and this allows us to cover a lot more area than we actually can in a boat. And it also means that I had to get over my fear of small aircrafts because I was the one who had to get up there and count the manta rays. But now I absolutely love it. I'm going on one tomorrow. And these are really going to help us to be able to figure out the seasonal distribution and how they're spatially distributed along the coast. We've also done some tagging of manta rays. So satellite tagging lets you track where the manta ray is going. So this summer, in collaboration with NOAA, which is the National Atmospheric and Oceanic Administration, we went out to put satellite tags on manta rays so we could better understand how they're using this nursery ground. And I'll give you an example of one of our manta ray tracks. So this is a manta ray named Leo, and we tagged him in June right here off the coast of Jupiter, Florida, actually right here. And he swam all the way up, straight away, swam up to off the coast of around Daytona, Florida, and then came back down the coast, went all the way down to Miami, and then went back up and kind of hung out where we had originally tagged him for a few weeks, and then his tag came off, and so we don't know what happened after that. But so what this means is that we're seeing that the habitat is way larger than the area that I'm actually studying, and that these manta rays are using the entire coast of Florida and probably encountering a lot of stuff along the way. We're also doing surveys of fishermen. We're just wrapping up this study right now, and we're doing these surveys of fishermen to understand, do fishermen know what a manta ray is? What would they do if they saw one? And do they support manta ray conservation? And what we found is that most of the fishermen do know what a manta ray is, but there is some room for outreach and education. What would fishermen do? So we find out that most fishermen said if they saw a manta ray swim by when they were fishing, they wouldn't do anything. They would just look at it. And so what we're gathering is it seems like most of these manta rays are accidentally swimming into the fishing lines. So we're going to try to encourage fishermen to reel in their lines if they see a manta ray swim past, so that the manta ray doesn't get entangled. And do they support manta ray conservation? We found that they overwhelmingly did support manta ray conservation. We're also starting a pilot education program this year. So if there are any teachers listening, come August or September, we will have lesson plans that are focused on grades 3 through 5 that will be all about manta rays and will feature real research from MMF. So if that's something you're interested in, please get in contact with me. And this is towards the end of my presentation. I just wanted to show you a pretty video of 2 manta rays that are feeding. And I love how they're synchronized their movements. I think it's so beautiful. So if you want to follow us on social media, the Marine Megafauna Foundation is on Instagram and Facebook. Specifically, if you want to follow what's going on in Florida, follow the Facebook Marine Megafauna Foundation Americas. If you want to follow me on Instagram at Florida Manta Girl, I post a lot of my manta drone videos on there. So if that's something you like seeing, yes, and go to www.marinemegafauna.org to learn about our latest research. And you can also sign up for a newsletter that gets sent out about once a month. And I'd like to thank all of my funders, Kansas City Zoo and Disney Conservation Fund. They've all been really great in making this research possible, and some of our collaborators at NOAA and the Field School. And we also have a wonderful group of volunteers. This project is completely man-powered by people donating their time, and it's really great. So thank you guys so much for coming out, and I will leave you guys with this is a 10-minute manta ray video that I sped up to be 45 seconds, but it's the largest group of manta rays I've seen in Florida. There's about 7 together feeding all at the same time. And at one point, a dolphin swims through, and it's really cool. I just love to watch the patterns of their movements. So thank you guys all for joining, and I will try to figure out how to questions with Janae.
That video is so fun.
It's on my Instagram, I believe, if you guys want to go watch it again, in case it's jumpy.
Is this a drone, or did you have?
Yeah, we have started using drones a lot during our research. They're so helpful. All right, I'm going to stop.
Okay, we've got a couple people on our chat, and a lot of people are saying how awesome your presentation was. Thanks so much. Go up to the top. Okay. First question from Christina. She's a junior at UCF in Florida studying marine and aquatic biology. Loves your work, super intrigued by it. Thanks for sharing. And she's asking if you seek assistance, maybe talk about, I mean, you had those volunteers, how did they come to you and work with you? I'm sure a lot of people would be interested if they're in the area, how might they get involved in this sort of thing?
Absolutely. So I actually just finished hiring my research assistant for this summer. So each summer we have one research assistant who works with us, full time to study the manta rays. So this includes going out on the boat, doing aerial surveys, and we used to do outreach at festivals and stuff, but that is no more. But yeah, so I post these jobs typically, I'm advertising them usually at the local universities because I want someone who is local, but I also always put them on MMF's Facebook page and all our social media channels. So that's how you would find out about those. And yes, we have people every year who come out.
Cool. So be sure to check out those MMF boards. You guys, I was thinking you were saying, Jessica, that you had looked up if anyone studied mantas before, and it was pretty much no. But since you've started, have people contacted you and been like, oh, by the way, I knew about this and like added to your data set, or is it still, you're pretty much the Manta Florida girl?
Well, so there is a project and we collaborate with the Georgia Aquarium, and they've been studying this aggregation of manta rays up in northern Florida, which can be a very, very large aggregation of manta rays that the fishermen all know about because they use the manta rays to fish cobia off of. If you put into YouTube manta ray cobia Florida, there's tons of videos of them doing it. But I mean, yes, some people did know about the manta rays. I think a lot of people were surprised at how many I was able to find. But now more people know about our work, and we're getting more and more reports of manta rays from citizens in Florida. And actually, since the coronavirus, with people staying home, I've been getting all these reports from people in their Miami condos who are seeing manta rays, and I've gotten so much more than I usually do. And I actually got a report this morning of someone who saw a manta ray. So
wow, all this free time to stare at the ocean.
Yeah.
Brooklyn, I see that you have your video on. Do you have a question you wanted to ask?
Actually, yeah, I was wondering how often do like the trackers from the mantas, how often do they like get lost?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It really depends. We put out 5 tags and we recovered 4 of them this year. And luckily that was because the mantas are swimming close to the beach and they washed up on the beach and people found them. But I know people who study other fish who their tags fall off in the Gulf Stream, and that goes straight north really fast. They don't see their tags till they wash up in Europe like months later. Yeah, that's a very good question.
Good question. Hannah is wondering if you've ever seen the black manta morphs in Florida.
So yes, that's a little bit of a sore subject for me because we have only seen one, which are called melanistic mantas. So basically these guys are all black and they just have like a little bit of white on their bellies, and they're absolutely beautiful. But we saw one, and it's the day, I blame it on the GoPro. It was probably some user error, but I just have this one terrible video of it, and the really good video I got, the GoPro wasn't recording. So yeah, that's why it's a sore subject for me. And it was at the beginning of our study, and I was like, okay, we'll see another one, and we haven't.
Dang it. Well, if you're interested in melanistic mantas, I'm pretty sure next week I'm going to have a talk with manta researcher Anna Flam, and that's pretty much her topic. So if you, Hannah, or anyone else wants to tune in next week, I'll advertise for that the same way I did for this chat. And if you have the time to tune in, I'm sure she'll talk about that in depth.
Okay, and I also wanted to say in response to that Christina's question earlier, I am always happy to talk to like young marine scientists and conservationists. So just find me online and send me a message. I'm always happy to give advice or go over resumes or anything like that.
Nolan asks, oh, again, just saying that he would love to work for that. He's halfway through his PhD. It's not a marine-related doctorate program, but he does have extensive stats and computer background information. So
I always need a technology person.
Super useful.
Yeah, and the other skills we look for in volunteers in the field are being able to operate a boat, being able to operate drones, free diving, and underwater photography. So.
All those water things plus someone who knows what they're doing with data, yeah?
Yeah.
Stats wizards.
Mm-hmm.
We've got an undergraduate and marine biology student and wants to know if you have advice on how to get into this field to kickstart a marine biology career.
Yeah, I have lots of advice. There's a podcast called How or Do You Want to Be a Marine Biologist, where I have an episode on there where we talk a lot about that. I guess the big thing is to get experience, find out what you like. Academia isn't for everyone. And there's just lots of ways to contribute to marine research and conservation that's not the typical path. So my usual advice is to think outside the box and find out what really interests you, because there's lots of different ways to do things.
Cool, thank you. And what was the podcast called again?
It's called Do You Want to Be a Marine Biologist, I think. So You Want to Be a Marine Biologist.
So You Want to Be a Marine Biologist.
That's it. That's
all right. Great. Nilza. Hi, Nilza. I know her from Tofu. Do you have an idea for the total number of manta rays? And could you tell us again what that ratio for female to male juveniles are?
So the ratio for female to male is about 50-50. It's almost exactly half. It's not statistically different. What was the other part of the question?
Total number of manta rays?
So we have 59 individuals that we've identified from our boat-based surveys. We probably have another, at this point, like 10 or 15 that have been identified by citizen scientists. But our discovery curve is basically a straight line. So we are continuing to discover new individuals. So yeah, we definitely haven't recorded the entire population. And I'm putting my email address for those people who are interested in these comment things.
In the chat?
Yeah.
Cool. So definitely check out her email below. Pick her brain. Ricky wants to know, you saying you've seen mostly juveniles in southern Florida. Maybe, do you have any idea where the mature population is? And have you been able to see migrations in other nearby areas via Manta Matcher data?
Yeah, so the population that I told you that the Georgia Aquarium was studying is a population of adult manta rays, but it's seasonal. So we don't really necessarily know where they are, except for when they come during that season, which is usually like the spring. No, that's a huge question we have. And on Manta Matcher, the most common or the most probable populations that these mantas would be connected to are either the Gulf of Mexico or probably like the Caribbean, like maybe the Mexican Caribbean. So we do check those on Manta Matcher. It's likely, since ours are all juveniles, they'd probably be migrating away, and that other people would identify them that match first, because I think ours are, we're the first people to see these. Or they could be going up the east coast of the United States, where the water, they're up there and the water is murky and
no one sees
much diving. I have reports from North Carolina and South Carolina, and we've put those in Manta Matcher. So maybe something cool will come out, but we need more people reporting.
Yeah. Here's a cool Florida question from Connie Miami. She says, thanks so much. And how mantas interact with local fauna? Do you know how they interact with sharks, alligators, manatees?
So we don't see a lot of shark predation here, or at least I think we have 3 mantas with shark bites. Which is more evidence that this is maybe a nursery ground, because nursery grounds are usually places where the babies are going to be safe from predators. I have seen eagle rays following the manta rays. I don't know what that is. They don't feed on the same things. But I have drone footage of an eagle ray following a manta ray for some reason. And a footage of the dolphin swimming through that manta rays, but I think that's just happenstance. But yeah, I don't know. Alligators shouldn't be in the ocean. They don't do well in salt water. So yeah, but yeah, we're looking at the other species that are with them, mostly the species that are swimming like in the immediate vicinity, which usually is just like the remoras and the shark suckers, and sometimes little jacks that will swim right in front of their mouth. And what's interesting is, like what I said, up in northern Florida where the fishermen target the manta rays for cobia, we don't see a lot of cobia on these baby manta rays in shallow water down here. So I don't know, I've talked to some fishermen who say the cobia are on the bull sharks now and not on the manta rays anymore. So it's a really interesting research question that I'm not sure why.
Oh, weird. Cool. You had some good but horrible pictures of boat strikes and then really fast healing. In tofu, we have a lot of cleaning stations that we attribute to really fast healing. Your bottoms of all your pictures were just sand. Are there offshore reefs and cleaning stations that you feel they go to?
So there's definitely offshore reefs. And this is one of the interesting things, is that we have reefs that are about a mile offshore and about 60 feet or 20 meters of water. And they rarely see manta rays on those reefs. Like, you know, I get a couple reports here and there, but unless they're utilizing them at night or something weird, the manta rays don't appear to be utilizing those coastal reefs. And we have not observed any cleaning behavior. And the mantas that people have sent me videos on those reefs, I've never seen cleaning behavior. So I don't know, maybe they're babies and they don't need to be cleaned as much, or maybe they're just doing it somewhere that's really cryptic and we don't know about.
Yeah, cool. Let's see. How important is recording the acoustic activity of manta and its environment, and what do you do with the data? So maybe explain like the acoustic tags, what you're picking up.
Okay, or I don't know, maybe he's talking about sound in the water.
Maybe.
They're experiencing a lot of sound, and that's a great research question. I don't know how much is known about ray hearing in general. I know like manta rays, they probably don't know how well they hear at all, which is a great question. Like people are starting to more and more study like acoustic disturbances in the marine environment. It's more usually focused on marine mammals. But yeah, this is actually a question I'm coming up with, doing the acoustic tags, which are tags that you put on the animal, and then you will have a set of receivers. And if the animal swims by this receiver close enough, it'll send like a unique signal so that you know that manta has been by this receiver. And it's really cool here in Florida, and actually along the whole coast of the United States, all scientists doing this research collaborate. So we have this huge receiver network that goes all up and down the coast. But where I'm about to put my receivers out in the next month or so, and the mantas seem to like the areas with lots of boats, but the receivers don't work as well.
Yeah.
If you're in an area that's really noisy, and this is something I've been going back and forth with in my head.
Yeah, and there are like hot spots of manta activities that are just hit by tons of boats and tourists to go see and swim with the mantas. So it's definitely an interesting area of study.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. There's your email. How do you name your mantas? And are there meanings behind their names?
Yeah, a lot of them. The funniest one is the manta named Gilly. Back in 2017, when we first met him, my friend named him after her boyfriend, and they have since broken up. But Gilly is our most sighted manta ray now, and we even put a satellite tag on him. So yeah, I let the volunteers name them after their friends and loved ones or whatever they want to. If you're a citizen scientist who sees one, this morning the guy named his manta Apollo. So yeah, we just kind of, it's more random than anything. They have boring numbers also associated with them, but the names are more fun.
Yeah, M827.
Yeah.
Fun name, like Miss Beauty. But as the scientists and researchers, when you see a manta and you enter it into your database and you find out that it's unnamed, like you might have the opportunity to name it. But if you had like a really big reason to get someone a gift, Christmas or something coming up, the Marine Megafauna, if you wanted to contact them, they do manta adoptions where you can name your own manta. We'll identify a manta for you to name, and then you get pictures and then updates on it every single time it's spotted for the rest of its life. So either come volunteer with us, right? Or check out our website if you want to put some names out there. And we were just talking about the healing, but why do they heal so fast? What's up with that?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer. I mean, it's fairly common in marine creatures and sharks and even sea turtles. I've seen sea turtles nesting where you literally can see their lungs like into their body cavity, and we're like, we're never going to see this turtle again. And then 2 years later, she's back on the nesting beach. So I honestly don't know if it's something with their microbial communities, something in the salt water. I don't know. I know people have been trying to study it, but I don't know how much they found.
Yeah, elasmobranchs in general, so sharks and rays, they do have like remarkable healing powers, like almost magical. And people have been trying to study it for a while now. And it's definitely a superpower, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really realize how good it was until I saw him gilly 4 days later after that horrible injury, and I couldn't.
That was amazing. So are you studying reef mantas or giant mantas?
Is that Jeffrey Trotta's question? Hi, Jeffrey. I know him. So yes, so technically right now, these are giant manta rays, our Mobula barostris. We don't have reef manta rays that we know of over in the Western Atlantic. But we think that these manta rays might be part of a new species or subspecies more closely related to Mobula barostris, and there's taxonomic and genetic evidence for that, and it's something that's still being studied.
Brooklyn, do you have another question?
Yeah, so I remember like a few years back, there was a lot of talk about trash getting into the ocean, and I know that there were big impacts like on a lot of turtles and things like that, but I was wondering if there were ever any injuries or impacts on the trash getting like to the manta rays, like as much as the sea turtles were. So
yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And yes, we see mantas feeding next to trash. Actually, one of those mantas with the fishing line on him, the fishing line actually had a plastic shopping bag that was trailing along, which we managed to remove. But I think in last week's talk by one of our other MMF researchers, she's out in Indonesia, and they specifically study how plastics affect manta rays, because the plastics, when they go into the ocean, they get broken up into all these tiny little pieces, which are the same size as the manta ray food. So manta rays are eating quite a lot of this plastic, and lots of marine life are, and it's a huge problem everywhere and still continues to be a huge problem. It's a very good question, and something we're going to need your generation to do better than ours did.
do they eat a lot of like microplastics and things like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so our researchers have found that I think manta rays are eating about 60 pieces of plastic every hour. So that's a lot of little bits of plastic. Yeah, and they've even shown that humans can eat, like the seafood we eat has microplastics in it, and it can be in our tissues. It probably is. So it's something to think about.
And if anyone's interested in watching that presentation, it is posted on the Marine Megafauna Facebook page, specifically our West Indian Ocean branch. So if you were to search MMF West Indian Ocean and the Facebook page that comes up there, we have that Indonesian researcher microplastics talk on there too. And it's all about mantas and microplastics, so it's really interesting, but also pretty sad. Dang it. Nolan, I see your cam is on. Do you have a question?
Yeah, so I'm sorry for asking another one. I know I asked one already, but so I was wondering if there's been any like previous research. I know you were talking a little bit about what was going into maybe why these mantas are healing so quickly. Do you know if anyone's looked into like whether there's any homologs to the genes in the liver that cause the liver to regenerate so quickly after damage is done? Or are they specifically focusing more on the microbiota, and that's kind of the main hypothesis right now as to why that might be occurring? Do you know off the top of your head?
I do not know. I mean, that's a really great question, and I can look it up. I don't know if anyone's specifically looked at like liver stuff, but I know there's researchers at Moat who are looking at elasmobranch healing. I think we're looking into like cures for cancer type things.
Yeah, I've heard about that, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if they're still doing it. But yeah, no, that the short answer is I don't know, but it's a great question and a very interesting one. You're welcome to research it.
Yeah, I'm gonna look it up for sure.
I can get you some manta tissue.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you for the talk, by the way. That was really intriguing.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
All right, let's see. I had a couple questions. When you're identifying the sex on all these juveniles, I know that it's hard to tell a male the younger they are. Have you found a lot of males that turned out to be female that turned out to be male based on your observations over the years?
No, we pretty much make sure we get a photo if we're going to definitively say it's one or the other. So we have pictures of all the claspers.
Okay, good. I loved your comparison of like Instagram worthy photos versus like a typical crap visibility day.
Well, I had to do that because I had so many photographers wanting to come out with me, and I'm like, it's really, really difficult. These people had perfect conditions and friendly mantas and come out with me all the time. Most of the time, you get to see their butt, and that's it.
Yeah. And how many years have you been running the Florida Manta Project?
So we did that first preliminary study in 2016. So it's been about 4 years. We're entering our 5th year of research.
It's really cool. All right. I think we're pretty much wrapping it up. We had a lot of great questions. Thank you guys so much for all tuning in, and thank you so much, Jessica, for your time and knowledge.
Yeah, no, that was fun. Thanks, everyone.
All right, everybody stay safe, and hopefully see you next week for our next talk.
Cool.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.